Amidst the crowd, we are constantly subjected to a silent mental drain. This drain does not stem from external pressures of survival, nor from life's setbacks and hardships, but rather from an individual's excessive fixation on how others judge them. This fixation is not an isolated phenomenon, but a universal human trait present in everyday life. It silently influences every choice we make, affects every emotion we feel, and even subtly reshapes the course of our lives. We often unconsciously treat others' opinions as the yardstick for measuring our own worth and regard external validation as the core goal of our pursuit of happiness. Yet in this process, we gradually stray from our true selves and lose our inner peace and tranquility. This phenomenon is not unique to modern society. As early as the development of modern philosophy, thinkers had already engaged in profound reflection on it. The German philosopher Schopenhauer, in particular, drew upon a lifetime of observation and research to address this fundamental human vulnerability head-on, constructing a comprehensive system of critique and redemption. This content is grounded entirely in internationally recognized philosophical facts. It eschews subjective preaching and emotional manipulation, presenting its arguments in a conversational, reflective style that balances philosophical depth with accessibility. Designed for extended listening, it guides you to understand the essence of external judgment at its root, grasp the core of Schopenhauer's philosophy of happiness, and discover a path to escape mental exhaustion and return to an authentic life. To understand why individuals are bound by external judgment, we must trace the roots of this phenomenon from the dual dimensions of human nature and social development. From the essential logic of human survival, gregariousness is a fundamental attribute that ensures our continuity. Acceptance by the group signifies a guarantee of survival, while isolation and exclusion imply survival risks. This primal survival instinct has gradually evolved into an individual's psychological need for external validation. As social structures have continued to evolve, this fundamental survival need has further transformed into a spiritual pursuit of honor, prestige, and social recognition. Individuals have begun to equate others' affirmation with the realization of self-worth, viewing external praise as a marker of success in life. Throughout the journey of personal development, this psychological tendency remains constant. The childhood craving for approval from elders, the adolescent preoccupation with peer evaluations, and the adult pursuit of social prestige are all, at their core, extensions of this instinct. In the modern social environment, the diversification of social settings and the ease of information dissemination have further amplified this fixation. Individuals begin to deliberately craft their outward image, consciously catering to mainstream aesthetics, hiding their true selves beneath societal expectations, and turning life into a performance stage for the outside world. In this state, an individual's emotions are entirely dictated by external factors, and their self-judgment is completely swayed by others. While they appear to live among others, they have in fact long since lost their spiritual autonomy and freedom. As a central figure of German voluntarism, Schopenhauer's entire life was dedicated to distancing himself from worldly judgment. It was precisely this lifestyle choice that allowed him to transcend the mainstream perspective and develop objective, profound insights into human nature. Schopenhauer did not follow the conventional path of life. He remained unmarried throughout his life, had no children to accompany him, and kept his distance from noisy social gatherings, choosing instead to live in solitude and devote all his energy to philosophical reflection and theoretical writing. In his era, such a lifestyle was viewed by society as eccentric, drawing widespread criticism and misunderstanding. Yet Schopenhauer steadfastly adhered to his own spiritual rhythm, never altering his choices due to external judgment. Observing the behavioral patterns and psychological states of the masses from an outsider's perspective, he discovered that the vast majority of people were trapped in a cognitive fallacy, prioritizing external judgment over their true inner selves, sacrificing genuine happiness for illusory validation. Schopenhauer explicitly pointed out that this excessive pursuit of external validation constitutes a form of spiritual self-exhaustion and is the greatest obstacle to a happy life. He did not deny the value of normal social interaction or reasonable evaluations from others. Rather, he criticized a value system that puts the cart before the horse. He opposed individuals abandoning their spiritual convictions and going against their own will simply to please others. This perspective is not a negative, reclusive attitude toward life, but a rational critique grounded in human nature and a profound defense of individual spiritual autonomy. Schopenhauer's philosophy of happiness was not constructed out of thin air, but rather inherited and developed the classical framework of ancient Greek philosophy, with its core theory unfolding from Aristotle's classic classification of the dimensions of happiness. Aristotle divided the core elements determining human happiness into three key dimensions. This classification has been adopted by the Western philosophical community for 1,000 years, becoming the foundational paradigm for the study of happiness. In his work, The Wisdom of Life, Schopenhauer reconstructed and interpreted this framework from a voluntarist perspective, making it more relevant to the existential dilemmas of modern humanity. The first dimension is the individual's intrinsic essence, encompassing intellectual capacity, moral character, mental state, and the core of the will. These are the individual's own, inalienable essential attributes and constitute the core foundation of happiness. The second dimension is external material possessions, comprising objective conditions such as wealth and resources for survival, which serve merely as the basic guarantees of existence and possess instrumental value. The third dimension is judgment from the perspective of others, encompassing reputation, prestige, and social evaluation, which are derivative values arising from external relationships and lack stability and authenticity. In modern happiness research, Anglo-American analytic philosophy has transformed this framework into an empirical research model. Extensive surveys have confirmed that intrinsic qualities have a far greater impact on happiness than material conditions and external evaluations. Continental philosophy, however, views this framework as an early prototype of existentialism, arguing that this distinction strikes at the core contradiction between an individual's authentic existence and mundane decline. Based on this three-dimensional framework, Schopenhauer, from a voluntarist perspective, established a clear hierarchy of values for the three dimensions of happiness. This hierarchy constitutes the core tenet of his philosophical system and is recognized as an established conclusion within the international philosophical community. Schopenhauer maintained that an individual's inner essence possesses absolute self-sufficiency. It does not depend on any external conditions, is entirely under the individual's own control, and is the sole stable source of happiness. The richness of the mind, inner peace, and the firmness of will enable the individual to maintain spiritual tranquility in any environment. This form of happiness is unaffected by external changes and remains unchanged by the judgments of others. External material possessions possess only a basic instrumental value. They need only satisfy basic survival needs and ensure a stable livelihood. Excessive accumulation of material wealth not only fails to enhance happiness, but also brings about greater anxiety and a spirit of one-upmanship, exacerbating internal mental strain. Empirical research in Anglo-American analytic philosophy also supports this view. Once material conditions meet basic needs, further accumulation of wealth has no direct correlation with happiness. As for the judgments of others, a derivative form of value, they are entirely dependent on external perspectives. Their emergence and disappearance are beyond an individual's control, making them highly subjective and uncertain. They cannot determine an individual's true worth, nor can they bring lasting, stable happiness. Schopenhauer did not entirely dismiss the significance of others' judgments. In specific social contexts, reasonable reputation and evaluation possess practical value. However, he firmly opposed treating them as the core pursuit of happiness and rejected the individual's inversion of priorities in value choices. In real life, the general public commonly suffers from a reversal of value priorities, which is the core root cause of mental exhaustion and a lack of happiness. Most people invest a great deal of energy into chasing others' judgments, deliberately crafting an outward image that conforms to worldly expectations, pursuing false prestige and superficial recognition, while neglecting the cultivation and improvement of their inner essence. To cater to worldly standards, they choose lifestyles unsuited to themselves and abandon pursuits they truly love. To maintain outward appearances, they overexert themselves physically and mentally, bearing pressures beyond their capacity. To earn others' praise, they mask their true nature and conceal their genuine emotions and thoughts. Under this behavioral pattern, individuals gradually lose a clear sense of self, surrendering complete control of their lives to external forces and becoming puppets of societal expectations. Schopenhauer defined this state as spiritual alienation, in which an individual's authentic will is suppressed by societal norms and genuine needs are obscured by external judgments. Life ceases to be the unfolding of one's own will and becomes merely an accommodation to the gaze of others. In the subsequent development of continental existentialist philosophy, Heidegger defined this state as the fall of the average man, while Sartre, through his view that existence precedes essence, further emphasized the importance of the individual's authentic choice. These two major philosophical schools formed a coherent intellectual lineage, collectively validating the profundity of Schopenhauer's perspective. We often overestimate the importance of external judgment and our own standing in the eyes of others, a cognitive bias prevalent among the general public. In reality, everyone's primary focus lies within themselves. So-called external judgments are mostly fleeting idle chatter, superficial, subjective assessments that do not constitute an objective definition of an individual's worth. The gazes, gossip, and evaluations we care so much about are, in the eyes of others, merely insignificant fragments. They will not be remembered for long, much less influence anyone's life. We expend a great deal of energy catering to these fleeting judgments and dwelling on these weightless discussions. In essence, we are using others' superficial perceptions to punish our own inner world. Schopenhauer bluntly stated that the public's judgments are largely devoid of rational thought, stemming from subjective biases, herd mentality, and emotional venting, and thus lack objective reference value. People often habitually judge others from their own perspective, seeing only superficial phenomena rather than the whole truth. The conclusions they draw are filled with subjective speculation rather than objective facts. In today's modern society, where information spreads rapidly, such superficial judgments are ubiquitous. A flood of unreflective opinions and biased commentary is disseminated as truth. If one allows oneself to be swayed by such discourse, one will only sink into endless mental exhaustion. Anglo-American analytic philosophy emphasizes the need to distinguish between reasonable advice and popular judgment. Reasonable advice holds rational value, while popular judgment is meaningless and need not be overregarded. Excessive concern with external judgments has a comprehensive negative impact on the individual. This impact is not limited to the emotional level, but permeates life choices and mental well-being. Emotionally speaking, over-concern with others' opinions makes one sensitive, anxious, and prone to overthinking. Emotions become entirely swayed by external discourse, leading to a loss of inner peace and stability. This results in a prolonged state of mental exhaustion, leaving one physically and mentally drained. In terms of life choices, external judgments become shackles that bind the individual, preventing them from breaking free from societal norms, pursuing their true passions, or making unconventional choices. Ultimately, this leads to the abandonment of opportunities for personal growth and a life of mediocrity and repression. On a spiritual level, constantly catering to external expectations causes individuals to gradually lose their sense of self, forfeit the ability to think independently, and lose the courage to stay true to their convictions. They become conformists without a mind of their own, merely drifting with the current. In this state, even if an individual gains recognition and praise in the conventional sense, their heart remains filled with emptiness and confusion, because this validation stems not from the realization of self-worth, but from a compromise with the gaze of others. Schopenhauer emphasized that the core of happiness lies in inner harmony and peace, not in external praise and recognition. Success achieved by going against one's true nature is never true happiness, and recognition gained at the expense of oneself is never a goal worth pursuing. Freeing oneself from the shackles of external judgment does not mean becoming cold, selfish, or indifferent to others. Rather, it involves establishing clear boundaries of values, upholding one's spiritual core, and maintaining a rational perspective without being swayed. The practical path proposed by Schopenhauer is not one of extreme withdrawal from society, but rather a rational commitment to the self, a path that is highly realistic and feasible. First, establish a rational cognitive framework to clearly distinguish the nature of external judgments. Recognize the subjectivity and illusory nature of conventional opinions, and do not treat them as standards for measuring self-worth. Do not allow them to dictate your emotions or choices. Second, shift your focus inward towards self-improvement, concentrating on refining your mind, upholding moral character, and pursuing spiritual enrichment. Enhancing one's inner essence is the core strength for resisting external interference and the foundation for lasting happiness. Empirical research in Anglo-American analytic philosophy indicates that individuals with higher levels of inner cultivation and a richer spiritual world are less sensitive to external judgments and more capable of maintaining inner peace. Furthermore, embrace the authenticity of yourself. Everyone has imperfections and a unique rhythm of life. There is no need to conform to worldly standards or force yourself to live in a way that pleases others. Accepting your whole self and staying true to your own rhythm is, in itself, a form of strength. Finally, maintaining a moderate amount of solitude is essential. Solitude is not loneliness. Rather, it is a way for individuals to detach from external distractions, gain clear self-awareness, and stay true to their inner selves. Only by reflecting on oneself in solitude and refining one's inner self in quietude can one truly break free from the shackles of convention and attain spiritual freedom. Those who truly possess the capacity for happiness are not those who have earned everyone's approval, but those who possess an inner strength that remains unshaken by external judgment. They clearly understand their own worth and have a clear sense of their life's purpose. They do not become conceited by others' praise, nor do they doubt themselves because of others' criticism. They hold fast to their own will and true nature, follow their own rhythm of life, do what their hearts approve of, and choose the path that suits them, without pandering, blindly following, or compromising. Such individuals, even if misunderstood by the world and lacking dazzling fame, can still possess inner peace and tranquility, enjoying the freedom and richness of their own lives. In contrast, those bound by external judgments often live in a state of cautious repression and endless mental exhaustion. They may seem to please everyone, yet they end up betraying themselves. They may appear to have gained much recognition, yet they have lost their most precious self. Schopenhauer's philosophy of happiness does not reject social interaction or empathy. Rather, it advocates that individuals uphold their own boundaries, refusing to be swept away by popular judgment or held hostage by worldly expectations. While treating others with kindness, one must remain true to one's core. While integrating into society, one must maintain spiritual independence. The essence of life is a journey of self-cultivation, not a performance for others. Throughout our lives, we will encounter countless people, hear countless opinions, and face countless judgments. We can never satisfy everyone, nor can we ever gain everyone's approval. Rather than wasting energy trying to please the outside world, we should settle our minds and refine ourselves. Rather than worrying about others' gazes, we should focus on our own growth. External judgments are always complex and varied, and worldly expectations are endless. Only inner peace and self-acceptance are the sources of lasting and stable happiness. Schopenhauer's philosophical wisdom, having withstood the test of time over a century, still strikes a chord with the core concerns of modern humanity. The reason lies in the fact that it consistently revolves around the individual's authentic happiness and steadfastly upholds the core value of spiritual autonomy. In today's fast-paced, information-saturated society, this wisdom is all the more precious. It reminds us not to lose ourselves in the clamor of the world, nor to squander our lives in the face of others' judgments. Happiness is never found in the eyes of others, but within our own hearts. Value is never found in the words of others, but in our steadfast commitment to ourselves. Breaking free from the shackles of external judgment is not an overnight process. It requires continuous self-awareness and unwavering inner resolve. Whenever we find ourselves unconsciously caring about others' opinions, we must promptly remind ourselves to return to rational thinking, distinguish between superficial criticism and reasonable advice, and avoid letting meaningless remarks affect our emotions. Whenever we feel tempted to conform to societal expectations or abandon our true selves, we must stand firm in our convictions, remembering that life belongs to us alone and that we need not compromise for the sake of others' expectations. This journey may encounter obstacles or face misunderstanding, but as long as we persevere, we will gradually break free from external constraints and cultivate inner strength. When we are no longer swayed by others' gazes or swept along by societal judgments, we will discover that life becomes simple and transparent, and life becomes carefree and light. We can boldly pursue what we love, openly embrace our imperfections, and face life's ups and downs with composure, without needing to put on a facade, tiptoe through life, or compromise ourselves. This spiritual freedom and clarity cannot be replaced by any external praise, and this inner peace and happiness cannot be bought with any material wealth. The solitude and contemplation that Schopenhauer upheld throughout his life were not an escape from life, but a safeguard of his own happiness and a pursuit of spiritual freedom. Through his own life experiences, he demonstrated that true happiness does not depend on external validation or worldly success. It requires only inner harmony and tranquility. We need not replicate Schopenhauer's lifestyle, but we can learn from his wisdom, his equanimity toward worldly judgments, and his steadfast commitment to his true self. Amid the complexities of human relationships, maintain clarity. Amidst the clamor of the world, preserve purity. Amidst the chaos of external judgments, hold fast to your true self. Do not be swept away by popular trends. Do not be drained by criticism. Instead, diligently refine yourself, live with intention, remain true to your heart, and make the most of your time. Life spans but a few decades. What is most precious is never the amount of recognition one gains, but living freely, living with clarity, and living true to oneself. There is no need to seek everyone's understanding, nor to heed trivial gossip. To walk each step and live each day according to one's own will is the best way to account for one's life. From a philosophical perspective, an individual's fixation on external judgment stems fundamentally from a lack of confidence in one's own worth and a failure to uphold one's authentic will. The process of breaking free from this fixation is the process of spiritual awakening, a return to authentic happiness. Whether it is continental philosophy's emphasis on authentic existence or Anglo-American analytic philosophy's empirical evidence of inner well-being, both confirm the same truth. The core of happiness lies forever within the individual, not in external judgment. May we all draw strength from Schopenhauer's philosophy of happiness. Let go of our fixation on others' opinions, break free from the pursuit of worldly approval, focus on our personal growth, and safeguard our inner peace. Live the life you love. Lead a life of ease and composure. And do not betray yourself or this one and only life. With that, today's discussion on Schopenhauer's philosophy of happiness is drawing to a close. We have spent a considerable amount of time dissecting how external judgments bind us and mapping out the path back to our true selves. The core of this is never to teach people to ignore the world or sever human connections, but rather to hope that everyone can guard their inner self, not to be held hostage by idle gossip, nor swept away by worldly standards. In this life, the hardest thing is never to please others, but to treat oneself well. The most precious thing is never external praise, but inner peace. You don't need to doubt yourself because of others' opinions, nor do you need to compromise yourself to please others. Your very existence is valuable enough, and the choices you make in accordance with your true self deserve to be affirmed. If you're currently troubled by others' judgments or caught in a cycle of mental exhaustion, why not pause for a moment and listen to the voice within? Let go of unnecessary attachments, shed the heavy burdens, lighten your load, and live for yourself. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. If these reflections have inspired you, please like and subscribe so you don't miss future philosophical insights. May we all break free from the shackles of others' judgments and live with freedom, clarity, and integrity. In this complex world, may we stay true to our hearts, live peacefully, and live up to our own potential, without letting ourselves or this life down. See you next time.